Hi, it's Hayden Williams here. It's another episode of the Man in the Mirror podcast. Now, you're in the right place if you're interested in skincare, grooming, fragrance. And each week I talk to a male guest about their life and about work and about some of those key items on their bathroom shelf, those things they can't do without and they use in their morning and evening routines. And hopefully they pass on a few sort of tips and tricks along the way. Now, this week, my guest is Raphael Babalola, who is one of the co-founders of a brand called Temple Skincare. I came across Raphael and Temple on Dragon's Den, actually. I was watching idly earlier in the year, and Raphael and his co-founder Adam Hutchinson were pitching in the den, and it really caught my attention because it was skincare. It's a skincare range for men of colour, and they did so well in their pitch. It's brilliant. I urge you to have a look if you can find it on iPlayer or YouTube or something like that. But they ended up getting, spoiler alert, they ended up getting investment from Steven Bartlett, who I think was probably their sort of ideal dragon. But so much to talk about, and I reached out to Raphael and Adam, and I was really keen to get them on the podcast. It felt like they were the perfect guests. Such an interesting story to tell about why they're doing what they're doing, how they got to do it, and how it's all going. So I got to speak to Raphael a little bit earlier this year. Yeah, Temple has a cleanse, tone and moisturize products specifically made for men of color. And I think, as you'll hear from Raphael in the chat, it's as much about representation as it is, that there's actual ingredients in there that work well for men of color. So it was really interesting to talk to him about all of that stuff. Oh, and listen to at the end when I come back on, because I've got a 15% discount code for the Temple site, which I'll put on my socials and on my post, but I'll also mention it at the end of the podcast as a little incentive to stick around. So without further ado, it's Raphael Babalola, who is one of the co-founders of Temple Skincare. Let's go. Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden Williams here. And this week I'm joined by Raphael Babalola, who is one of the co-founders of Temple, which is a men's skincare brand. And as I mentioned in the intro, I was alerted to this brand by Dragon's Den, of all things, where Raphael and his co-founder Adam were pitching in the den, which I'm sure we'll get into. But first of all, hi Raphael, how are you?
I'm really well, Hayden. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, great. And I just think, it seemed like this was meant to be, in that the podcast covers off talking to men about fragrance, skincare, grooming, and the stories of their business and personal life and entrepreneurship and all that stuff. And all that stuff seems to be kind of wrapped up in the story of Temple, and some of which you mentioned on Dragon's Den. But the first thing, it'd be great to find out about when you came up with Temple, which, if people haven't heard of it, it's currently a 3-step program for sort of men of color, a cleanse, tone and moisturize. What was it about the current products in the market? I mean, and what was missing for men of color with skincare? What did you want to address with that?
I think that the first thing that was really glaring and obvious to me was a lack of representation.
Right.
I think my experience, the background. So I grew up in a house where predominantly women. So I've got a mum, 2 sisters, versus me and my pops. So the women win that battle.
Yeah.
But they always had products around the house. I always kind of experiment with stuff, and I was always curious, okay, how comes you guys have stuff that you're using for your face instead of just using the soap or the shower gel, wherever else it may be? So growing up, when I'd have people sort of asking me why does your skin look like this, or what are you using, blah, blah, blah. And then I started doing searches online to then find other brands and that I could sort of tell people to use. It was just obvious. There was nobody that looked like me. Nobody looked like my friends. And that was the moment where it was why is this the case? And what started off with me just realizing, okay, I'm not represented in any of this, then went into me actually figuring out, okay, what's inside of these products and what are the things that we struggle with. So, I started working in a retail shop where we had to shave. And if you came into work with any facial hair, they would literally give you a shaving stick on the spot and say,
oh, really?
go to the bathroom. Yeah, I won't mention who the brand is, but I mean, yeah, there's a Netflix documentary about them and some of their practices. But hey, but yeah, you know, they'd make us shave on the spot. Obviously, for me with coarse hair, that would mean I'd get ingrown hairs.
Yeah,
you know, like it really nasty stuff. So then the idea of Temple then kind of got like crystallized when I'd go into stores and say, hey, like I've got ingrown hairs, like, you know, is there anything that you can recommend for me to use?
wow.
They just wouldn't know what to suggest. They wouldn't know what to suggest, wouldn't know how to treat it, wouldn't necessarily even understand what was going on my face. And it was just a combination of the two. It was one, I already feel like I'm not seen by the brands in the industry as a whole. And then when I go into retail stores and say, hey, like this is what, you know, I need help with.
Yeah.
No one really knows what to suggest. Yeah. And that's where the idea was birthed of, okay, this brand needs to exist.
Got it. So you were getting sort of like the razor bumps and sort of, you know, yeah, bumps
exactly.
under the skin. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly that.
Yeah. I mean, I've got sort of thicker hair as well. And it, you know, I'm obviously maybe some of these issues that are more prevalent in men of color, but I guess any kind of coarse hair, this is going to be an issue, isn't it? With
exactly
ingrowing hair and obviously the fact that men's skin is patently different to women's skin anyway, and you know, thicker and more oil and all those things.
Exactly.
So your background was retail then, that you're not from a sort of skincare or that side of the industry.
So like my background, I guess like growing up, like, you know, your first couple of jobs, like when you're going through college and then, you know, going through university. So yeah, it was kind of like retail stuff. After that, I ended up, so it's funny, I like straight out the gate started a business. Like I think entrepreneurship has always been something that sort of been like something that intrigued me. I don't think at first it was conscious enough to be, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I think I just enjoyed the concept of, okay, something doesn't exist. I think it can solve a problem and I'm going to go about like doing something about it.
Yeah.
So that's what happened straight out of uni. And then it eventually led me down the path of working for like tech startups.
Okay.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of my time there. So like a lot of it was centered around like anything kind of like commercials, like sales, partnerships, did some investor relations stuff. But that was really like my second university in terms of understanding products and sales and building a team and raising money and all of these different things. And then just before Temple, I then went to the other side of things. I went into a corporate environment, worked for one of the Big Four. Yeah, not much to say on that.
But a good grounding, I guess, you know, good.
Yeah, good grounding for sure. But again, like even in that environment, it was like another kind of like, it's weird, like the progression to launching Temple was over the span of years. It was like little things that were indicators to be like, this is actually where you want to be at.
Yeah.
And then after, you know, spending time in those sort of roles, I was like, I'm really interested in like e-commerce and like direct to consumer brands. And that's where it was like, you know, I've raised money before. I think I know I'll be able to like fundraise for this. I think I know how I'll be able to put a business case forward. And then, yeah, it felt like 2020, like the summer of 2020. It was like,
is that when it all started?
Yeah, that's when I really took it seriously. And I was like, okay, I think this idea I've been sitting on for like the last 5 years or so, I think now is a good time to actually think about bringing it to market. And, you know, like in a serendipitous kind of like way, Adam randomly reaches out to me and says, hey, Raph, like, by the way, I'm thinking about building a brand that sounds and looks like this. And I was like, that's crazy, because I'm thinking about the exact same thing.
Let's do this together.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, isn't it? You know, I hear this quite a lot on the podcast, you know, almost the sort of the jigsaw puzzle of various life experiences coming together. And as you say, that sort of serendipity of this is something that should exist, but bringing together the different work experience and skills that you've got. And I always love it. You know, I think it's very easy, and we could all do this after a few drinks or whatever. Go, you know what? I've got this great idea. We should, you know, launch this or launch that. And, you know, the amount of times we've heard that from mates down the pub or family or whatever. But I love it. You know, the difference is obviously someone that's got that kind of mindset of not in there. And I guess it can never be, oh, you know, I know this is going to be a roaring success and I know exactly what to do, but actually someone that's willing to sort of embark on the on the road to do it with enough, almost, you know, enough knowledge to say, well, I can get this started. But I suppose it starts with, you know, trying to identify a need and seeing a gap in the market, and you went for it.
Yeah. I think I'm quite fortunate as well, in the sense of I have a few friends around me who are like run their own businesses as well. So
you can see it in your peer group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, you know, getting into a startup really early as well, and having like the founders around me, and sort of like, you kind of like see what they're doing, and then you start to realize, oh, actually, like, you know, maybe I can do this as well. When you see it from like a really early embryonic stage with somebody else and what they've done and how they've had to develop to like get it somewhere personally, you kind of realize, oh, I feel like maybe I can do that as well. And with that, and then with certain friends, it kind of just gave me the confidence to be like, no, I can, you know, I can get something from 0 to 1. So why not give it a shot?
And it must be also that, you know, we rely on our network to give us guidance and mentorship, and, you know, just if we've got issues along the way, and, you know, say if there's people who are prepared to help, and you're prepared to, you know, try lots of things and fail, but just keep going because you believe in the idea. I guess that takes us to where I saw you. I think it was this year, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So Raphael and Adam, as I mentioned before, with their brand Temple, appeared on Dragon's Den. I mean, that obviously, that I assume that's sort of catapulted the brand. And I mean, it'd be great if you could just tell me a bit about how all that happened. Is there just a sort of application process, and you kind of jump through certain hoops? How did it all happen?
Yeah, so they actually they got in contact with us.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they got in touch with us. I think it was 2021, because we didn't actually launch the website till January of 2021, and then I think the summer of 21, we got an email from somebody on their team, and they were like, "Hey, like, you know, we've come across Temple." I think it was through Instagram,
right? And
they said, you know, we think that you guys would be great to come on the show. And it's funny because even one of our advisors was also saying like, yeah, you know, you guys should probably consider it. But for me, a big thing is timing. Anything that sort of like gets put in front of us, I always consider timing in it.
Yeah. Did it feel too early or too late? Or?
It did. It felt too early. It felt too early. And yeah, I just didn't think we had done enough. I didn't think we had, you know, really sort of like proven out enough of our sort of assumptions to be able to go on there and to be able to like stand firm with what it is that we're trying to do. And
about, I guess, pure sales as well, you know, selling enough of the product.
Exactly. But yeah, so there was an application process. We went through all of that, and, you know, we got all the way to the point of actually having it scheduled in to go up to Manchester to record. And the day of, I was still working full time at the time. The day of, when we were meant to catch our train up to Manchester, we got a message to say, "Oh, guys, you know, apologies, there's been a change in the schedule, so we'll have to have you come in on another day."
Oh yeah, oh God.
Yeah, and but do you know what? I took that as that's a sign,
right?
I took it as, you know, I didn't feel like now was the good time anyway. And when that happened, and they were like, "Oh, do you mind if you come tomorrow instead?" I was already like, no, I don't think I can do it. Like, I've already told to even get out of work today was
you had to come up with a cold or
24-hour bug. Exactly. So I was just like, nah, do you know what? Let's just leave it.
And then
then a year later, the same advisor was like, "Have you considered it again? Like, you know, maybe you should give it a shot now." And I still felt like it was early, but I was like, okay, cool. Like, why not? Let's give it a shot. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it is what it is. But yeah, and it was crazy because the day I sent the email to the producer to say, "Hey, like, are you guys casting again?" She was like, "Wow, like, this is literally the last day that anyone could have got in."
Oh, really?
Yeah, send your application off.
It was meant to be.
Get it. Yeah, we'll get it all done, and then, you know, we'll get you guys on. And yeah, we went through that process, and fast forward, we were recording the episode in June in Manchester. So
yeah, and I hope it's not a spoiler, but as you might tell, Raphael and Adam did really well, and the picture was fantastic. It piqued my interest, obviously, because of some of the work I'm doing. But it was really impressive. It was obviously interesting to lots of the different draggers in the den. But you ended up working with the great Steven Bartlett. So how's all that going?
Yeah, it's going well. Like, he is a very, very busy man. So at the moment,
I can imagine. I wonder, I guess it's not like The Apprentice or any of these shows, people wouldn't imagine that they're kind of sitting with you every day and giving you, advice 24/7. I suppose it's, it's slightly hands off. And how does it work? You kind of reach out when you need to, or is there regular check-ins?
Yeah, so actually, like, what's happened is, so a little while after the show had aired, so we actually met with him. So we went to we met him, his team in East London, and we were with him for a long time. I think it must have been about 3 hours, and it was really talking about the strategy for 2023 and the years going forward, but really focusing on like what we're going to do this year. And to be honest, that was enough. It was like it was me, Adam, and then it was Steven, somebody else on his team, I forget his name, but then the wider team was sort of popping in as well. So it really felt like everyone was like aware of what happened at the den. Everyone seemed to be really excited about what we're building. So that was good. And then since then, it's been touch points with other people in the team about what we're doing moving forward. Yeah. But yeah, like if we're able to reach out to him whenever we need, whatever we need help with, we're able to speak to, if not him, we'll speak to his brother. But yeah, it's been good so far. Yeah. And have you noticed since the airing of the show, has that been a real step change in terms of the brand and sales and sort of interest in what you're doing at Temple? Yeah, definitely. Like January was our biggest month. February was also a big month. We're tracking at like a really good rate this month as well in March. So we've definitely seen the uptick. And I think another thing it does is it gives you like more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it kind of just validates the brand as a whole. Yeah. Even with like, we've had like some retailers getting in contact with us who...
Have you?
Yeah. I mean, we've said yes to some of these retailers. So we're still sort of like ironing things out to like formally be able to announce it and stuff. But yeah, like it definitely like validates what you're doing. And I think that the key thing that happened with it as well was just being able to get that message out. I think even in the den, like, there isn't, there's still a lot of education around the differences and between, the different needs depending on the pigmentation of your skin. So that was another key thing.
Totally, a massive part of it. And obviously, this is a tiny part of it, but as you say, opening that conversation up and your mission in the first place of more representation, starting conversations with people, and that can only be a good thing, can't it? So that, and we see it in all sorts of different movements, whether it's, Me Too or something as well. It's the conversations that need to be had, but actually you need those advocates and those people at the forefront who can sort of tell the story from lived experience, and how great that the brand started so well. Look, we'll come back to talking a bit more about Temple and the future for sure, but part of the podcast is to talk about some of your bathroom essentials and some of the products. And you mentioned growing up in a sort of female dominated household, so no doubt there were products all over the place. But I wonder now, in your regime now, Raphael, what kind of, I'm sure Temple features quite heavily, but what does your routine look like sort of morning and evening? Are there key products for you? How about sort of in the morning, what are you using?
Yeah, so I guess it's quite simple. So for my face, it's Temple products. So cleanser, toner, moisturizer. Then I follow it up with an SPF. Do you
have a certain SPF that you like to use, or?
Yeah, so I use the La Roche-Posay Invisible Fluids.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Really
and
good.
It's nice and light, isn't it? It's not, doesn't feel greasy.
Exactly, really light, absorbs quickly. No white cast is left behind. Application is super easy and simple. So yeah, that's what I go for on that front.
Right, and worth saying, I think this came up in Dragons Den, if I'm not mistaken, but I've also had previous guests on the idea with men of colour or black skin. It shouldn't need saying, but of course, the SPF still needs to be
100%
part of the routine, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's this whole message of, we don't need. It's not true. We need it, especially if you're going to be using like any any products that you specifically wanted to address anything, you know, I take the example of hyperpigmentation. Like, if you want to be able to address your hyperpigmentation and you're using products to help with that, you need to then follow it up with SPF to make sure that you're getting the full benefits of that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're pretty much wasting your money. Like you're not really doing anything. So yeah, SPF is 100% crucial and part of that routine.
And I notice, I can see Raphael on screen, and unfortunately you can't on the audio podcast, but Raphael's got a really good beard. What are you using? Just beard admiration here. Beard admiration. What do you use on the beard? Are you sort of clipper wise, you keep it?
Oh, so at the moment, I'm kind of just like letting it do its thing. I'm just I'm just growing it out.
Growing him out.
Yeah, I don't really use anything on. So I spritz it in the morning with rose water.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
I didn't expect you to say that. I love that.
Yeah, just to keep it like, you know, to stop it from being like dry and
funky smelling.
Yeah, I mean,
you're smelling of rose. I love this.
But yeah, like literally rose water on the bed and the hair as well. So just use that, and then I just use like different oils. So it's like tea tree oil.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Jojoba oil. Just stuff to keep it like moisturized.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and to help the skin underneath as well.
Yeah.
And what about hair, Raphael?
So that's again.
You got certain products
super straightforward. Rose water again, and then in my hair I'll use again tea tree oil to sort of stop any kind of like dryness on the scalp or any kind of itching. And then you've got coconut oil, and it's pretty much it. It's pretty like nothing too crazy. Aloe vera oil as well. That's really good for growth. So yeah, I kind of like, I buy it separately, then I mix it into like this one bottle I've got with like this nozzle where I can just like apply it direct to my scalp.
Put it through.
And then yeah, that's it.
And do you end up staying loyal to sort of particular brands in that space, or do you sort of try different things?
There aren't any brands that I'm sort of specifically looking at in terms of like what I use for my hair or my beard. Again, like for me, it's just like walking to the store and I'm finding like, you know, 100% aloe vera oil, knowing that it's going to be exactly what I want it to be. And then I kind of just like mix it up on my own at home. But it's a space that we're looking at ourselves.
Right.
Because again, the same way we were looking at this skincare space and we were like, oh, okay, we don't see that much representation here. It's the same way that when we have conversations with our customers and other men about, oh, what are you using for your hair? What are you using for your beard?
Yeah.
Again, there seems to be this fragmented idea of what they're using, what they shouldn't be using. So, you know, it's one of the spaces that we're looking at.
Might be some things you can do there.
Yeah.
And are you a fragrance fan, Raphael? Do you have a regular fragrance?
You know what? So I'm not a fragrance, but I have two friends who are massive on this whole fragrance.
It tends
thing.
to, if it sort of gets to people, it tends to get them pretty hard, you know, and then they get really into it.
So yes, I'm trying to be careful. So actually, one of my closest friends, he bought me like my first niche fragrance. So he bought me Mancera Instant Crush.
Oh yeah,
for my birthday.
Nice.
So
do you like it?
That I really like. I do like it. Yeah, I try not to wear it too much because it's like, it kind of feels like it's a special occasion type of fragrance. But yeah, like whenever I wear that, like there's a lot of compliments. I really like it myself as well. And then if I'm not using that, I'm using the Givenchy Gentleman.
Right.
I got that as a gift as well. Classic. So yes, I'm kind of like alternating between the two.
And it's nice to have a variety so that a different fragrance for a different occasion or mood or something like that. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And you touched on it anyway, but you know, I was very interested in what's next for the brand, because I've no doubt with your ambition and the platform you've now got with Temple, that the idea would be to expand the product line. And you mentioned, you know, hair care and beard. Is that where you're heading? Is there anything sort of more concrete in the offing, or is it stuff that you're working on through the year?
Yeah, I think for us, so the reason why we called the brand Temple is it started with your body is your temple.
Yeah, nice.
And we just felt like it was a really fitting name, especially with all the other sort of like values and qualities that we think comes with, that's associated with that word temple. So yeah, like the plan is to have like a real a head to toe offering of products that you can use to look after like your well-being, your wellness. So if we're talking about, the top of the head, we're talking about hair care, we're talking about, skincare products, eventually going into body care, so like body washes, etc. So we are looking at like a spectrum of different places that we can go into, a lot of it being driven by feedback from our customers.
Yeah.
So we're constantly asking, just having really open dialogue and saying like, look, what are the things that you're maybe insecure about?
Yeah.
Because I think the premise of Temple was really about the insecurities around, having ingrown hairs and what that means for you.
Totally.
So it's about asking like, what are some of the other things that are insecurities? For some guys, there's insecurities around maybe losing their hair. So, okay, are there any products that we can introduce to help to sort of like slow that process down or to stop it altogether? So that's what's going to lead how we release products moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think as much as there is an opportunity in terms of releasing products, I think there's an even bigger opportunity in terms of conversations that can be had.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we want to be at the forefront of those conversations. We want to normalize, men speaking openly about their self-care practices, what they do for wellness, how they look after themselves. And just because I think it has this really like this ripple effect, and not to sort of sit here and be like, oh, we're going to change the world. But I genuinely feel like, if you feel better about how you look and you're more secure in yourself, I think it has a knock-on effect in terms of how you then treat other people around you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the knock-on effect. You start with yourself. It then means the next 2 to 3 people around you, you're a better version of yourself to them. That has an impact that resonates with them. They're then, better to the next 2 to 3 people around them. So in our little way, we're just like, we feel like by helping men feel better about themselves, it has a knock-on effect of how they then interact with in other spaces.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're preaching to the converted with me, but I absolutely endorse what you're saying. And it's true. I think as men, we're getting more comfortable with this idea of, that self-care isn't something that just applies to women or to other people. They're absolutely. And whether it was something that was sort of accelerated a little bit through lockdown, but this idea about looking after your wellness and your insides and taking time for yourself, it's integral. And as you say, I think it's a really interesting point that not only is it about maybe making yourself feel more confident or more centered or whatever it might be, that actually feeling good about yourself then can resonate outwards. And
exactly,
it's really interesting thing, what you're saying about the way you interact with other people and how you are. And I'm totally here for that. That's amazing. And with Temple, and by the way, I'll put links to obviously the website and the socials and some of the products you mentioned, but it's Temple without the vowels now, isn't it? What was that?
Yes.
What was that about? Let's get rid of vowels, anti-vowels.
Yeah. So,
it takes too long. Get rid of these.
So basically what happened was, when we first launched the brand, we had like this really, I can only kind of like describe it in like this really artsy aesthetic to the brand. And I realized like when I looked through, because I do this thing where like I will send out like an email blast to our customers and be like, hey, does anyone want to have like a 15-minute chat with me to find out like what we're doing next with products, or just to like get their feedback to really stay on the pulse as to what we should do next. And when I sort of like, I noticed the trend of the guys that we were attracting to purchase Temple and use the products. And I had a conversation with Adam and I said, I don't think like we're hitting all of the different kinds of men that we want to speak to.
Once you started seeing some of who these real life guys were, you thought it didn't quite connect.
I feel like we're going to find ourselves in a really, like almost in a niche of a so-called niche.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to find a way to still like broaden it out. And I just felt like I spoke to Adam and I said, we need to find a way where the brand can sit at the intersection of, say, yes, we're a personal care and grooming company, but it needs to be able to sit at the intersection of, say, sports, fashion, lifestyle, music. And we just felt like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to get this brand to feel a bit more punchy and have it to be able to, like, for example, have, maybe like a Stormzy create content with us, and it doesn't feel like he's having to change who he is to be our version of Stormzy. It can just be, okay, you're Stormzy, and the two brands just like sit together and it just works really well.
Yeah.
So as what seems like something being something, trivial of, okay, we took the ease out. It was more just like, no, we need something that feels a bit more punchy, something that felt a bit more like punchy is literally the point that's coming to mind.
No, I get it. As you explained it, obviously be slightly flippant about it, but I totally agree. And actually, there's a boldness to it now, and a kind of strength, and as fascinating, I think, how forward thinking you are, and looking into the future in terms of where it could sit in the ambition. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it does feel very contemporary, and you can imagine collaborations with all sorts of people. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
but I think and my slight diversion into vowels, but there's a kind of social purpose, charitable angle to Temple as well, isn't there? You kind of give a certain amount because the community side of it and charity is important to what you do.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the name. Like, when you think of temple and you say, your body is a temple, I think a lot of things can be a temple. I think it's kind of like giving you an insight into like the bigger and inner thinkings of what me and Adam are trying to do here. But it's like, when you point to your mind, you point to your temple.
Yeah.
Your home can be your temple. The community around you, that can be your temple. Like the world that we're all living in, that in essence can be your temple. It's like any place where you find peace, any place that you find like, that tranquility, that you can be at ease. So for us, it was like again, and it was us looking at this and saying, okay, cool, there is an opportunity to introduce products, but there is also like a social opportunity here as well.
Yeah.
So for us, it was like, it's not enough for this to be a business that's, turning over, touch wood, fingers crossed, like millions, annually.
Yeah.
It needs to also be a thing that like, this message is kind of like going out into our wider community, and we are making like positive change in that sense as well. So if it's us donating funds to organizations who will then distribute that to, sub-Saharan African causes, like that's something that we want to do. Mm-hmm. If it's us then sort of setting funds aside to be able to help some people access therapy, that's something that we're doing as well.
Yeah.
So for us, it was just thinking about like, what does temple actually mean?
Yeah.
And what are the different examples of like how this word could have additional meaning outside of the fact that we're saying, hey, like, use these products.
I think that's very much in tune anyway with brands that are being developed now. I think as from the other side, as consumers, we're much more interested and engaged with what the purpose is and the provenance and all these things. So it's great. It's great to hear, and I think it's also quite smart to look at the world beyond just the products on a shelf or on a website. And I love Mary Portas. I thought she's just such an engaging speaker, and like her programs. But she talks a lot about the kindness economy and having a purpose beyond the sort of material products, and it brought to mind that. And it by no means saying it's a cynical thing, but I think it's a smart thing, and any brand worth its salt that's coming to the fore and developing at the moment, I think customers almost, they almost expect that it's not just about profit and commerce, that there's more to it. I think it makes such a lot of sense. The other thing, Raphael, is I talk a lot on the podcast about skincare and perceptions from modern men. And I guess, we talked about niches within niches, but, I wondered if you met any resistance from men of color or, men in general, just about skincare. I've heard it a bit, and thankfully hear it a lot less now. Well, what's wrong with just soap and water and, bit of Old Spice or whatever it is, the old fashioned views, and, that what we talked about earlier, that men should be able to look after themselves and want to be the best versions of themselves and all of that stuff. But have you, what's been the reaction to your products and your friends or community or customers? Has there been any sort of pushback at all?
I think, so something that Adam and I thought, so great question. And obviously a very relevant question. And I think this was something that was at the forefront of me and Adam before we launched, and when we were even thinking about like what what's the brand going to represent and how do we want it to come across.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why we led with, we have this, I guess you can call it like a strapline, self-care for the mandem.
Yeah.
And essentially what we wanted to do was, I think with a lot of these brands, like we didn't want to like come into the space and kind of like do the whole, you know, what other typical brands do. Like we really wanted to speak to this audience on their level.
Yeah.
So
be authentic.
Yeah, be authentic. So the way me and Adam talk, the way we talk to our friends, the way we talk to people like, you know, at football, whatever, that's the language that we use in our copy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think what it did, it allowed us to kind of pull that barrier down.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't feel alien. It just feels like, oh, okay, you're normalizing it for us. As soon as we started using our language and our copy, and it came from a really authentic place, it helped us. It's not to say that it's completely solved it. There's still loads of work to do.
Yeah, of course.
But what it did was it then meant that it was a hook that we could use to draw people in and to get their attention.
Yeah, and you're speaking on a level.
Exactly. Yeah. And like we've had rappers who have got a hold of our box, and every time someone sees self-care for the mandem, there's a response. Yeah. There's an engagement.
It's a great strapline.
Yeah, and that's our opportunity to then be like, okay, cool. We've now connected based on that. Instantly, we've built that rapport. Now let us tell you a bit more. So that kind of just like it just helps. It's definitely helped, and I think there's been a change generally anyway. I think this was another thing that kind of like gave me a prompt to be like, okay, now's the time to start a brand like this. Is I noticed that more and more guys were speaking openly about their hair. There's kind of been this you know, upsurgence of guys growing out their hair. Yeah. More guys are, you know, getting locks. And I was just paying attention to conversations that were happening, even conversations within my friendship groups, and people openly talking about, oh, I'm doing this and that with my hair. And on the back of that, it felt like, oh, actually, there's a little like crack where I can see some light coming through to suggest that we are ready to start having these conversations. Yeah. So it's just about like, you know, putting out that little feeder of like capturing someone's attention and then building on that little slight intrigue to then be like, look, by the way, this isn't a knock on your masculinity or wherever else it may be.
It's nothing frightening.
This is just us. Yeah, this is just us looking after ourselves, like, and we're going to have to. And yeah, you know, as much as people try to go on like, you know, guys don't like skincare, the rest of it, I think the bigger thing is, do guys want to look good? Do guys want to feel good? Yes. So of course, it's simplifying that message and just focusing on that and saying, okay, well, this is one of the things, these are one of the practices that you can do to help sort of like, you know, make that happen. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I think it's so important, you know, talk about the strap line, but the fact that you've got that authenticity. I mean, I can imagine the worst thing in the world would be some big beauty conglomerate multinational sort of thinking about, you know, men of color as a segment and perhaps not, you know, engaging with that community and getting the messaging and the product all wrong. You know, you could imagine it being awful, but the fact that it comes from it's an issue that you identified and it's a product that you through your lived experience, and it just feels very genuine. So I think, as you say, that's the best way, and what a great way to disarm any kind of resistance is that, you know, you're talking in a language that people understand, and it doesn't feel condescending. It doesn't feel like top down. It's like it feels quite real. So I mean, it's obviously working so well. Man in the Mirror is the name of the podcast, and it acts, you know, it's come out very organically in the conversation anyway. But I'm really interested in not just, hey, you know, what products you use in your routines, but I think this idea of what we see when we look in the mirror, and, you know, the idea of self-image and appearance, you know, it does feel like an interesting time for all of that stuff now. And I wonder, how old are you, Raphael? If you don't mind me asking.
I am 32. Yeah, I'm 32 in January.
It's still quite a young guy. I mean, how do you, obviously appearance is important to you. I mean, what do you feel like when you look in the mirror? Are you happy? I mean, I guess you can look at it at a number of levels, can't you? Sort of more philosophically, how do you feel about yourself? But also, you know, on a purely kind of appearance level, you think, are you in a good space with what you see?
I think For the most part, yes. Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I think for me, it's more, I think about things more in terms of like on a real health level.
Yeah.
Like as opposed to anything else. I think
more holistic than that.
Yeah, I think the aesthetics, I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I don't, I'm not too.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I'm doing all right on that front. I think it's more. I definitely think more about stuff like the stuff that you can't see, the stuff that you're maybe not necessarily like aware of on the surface.
What, more the sort of emotional side?
Yeah, the emotional side, but even on like on a biological level, like like I think 2020 was like a really interesting year in the sense of like it was almost like this invisible enemy that like was getting into our bodies and was wreaking havoc. It just got me thinking about stuff on a whole different level and just wanting to like really take my health a lot more seriously. And like so even to the extent of like what we put into our bodies, what we put on our skin, just thinking around all of that is more what I think about like when I look in the mirror. But when I am, that's if I'm in like a my deep
like thinking mode.
Yeah, if I'm just on my like, what do I see today? It's like, okay, Raph, we need to go to the gym. We need to go back to the gym, bro. You've been out for a few weeks now. Like, you've been back from the holiday for a bit now. Like, you need to go back, start drinking more water, all of these.
Step it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But also, it must be the perils of having your own skincare business. And as soon as you say that to people, the first thing they do is kind of check out your face.
Yeah. Like,
is he a good advert for it? And I think he is, by the way.
I actually try not to say it. Like whenever people say, "Oh, like what'd you do?" I typically say,
"Do you? What do you say?"
I say I just run an e-commerce business. I just say like I run it. I'm like e-commerce man. Yeah. Like unless they really push, then I'll be like, okay, it's this thing, temple, skincare, blah blah blah.
Why is that then, Raphael? Too long, too complicated a story.
No, do you know what it is? I think I don't like to seem as if it's gonna sound weird. I always don't like to seem as if like I'm bragging. So me saying, "Oh, I just ran an online e-commerce," it's kind of me, kind of like just
playing it down.
Yeah, kind of like playing it down. And not to suggest that like I'm hiding this huge, massive thing. No, it's just like I don't know. I tend to just be like, "Oh, what'd you do?" "Oh, run an online e-commerce business."
But you strike me as quite a sort of humble guy as well. You don't seem like you're kind of a big bragger.
Life comes at you really fast. I've definitely had some experiences where life humbled me. So I think with those experiences, I'm kind of
keep it in mind.
Yeah, with those experiences, I'm kind of just like like life comes at you really fast. There's ups and downs. There's moments where you're on top of the world. There's moments where you feel like nothing's going your way. So I think just to stay really sort of like level-headed and humble about it all is
I think so. And I tend to think it's always better that way to be humble, but then to surprise people with cool stuff you're doing rather than overplay it and then they go, "Oh, thought you'd be better than just play it down."
Yeah.
That is good, isn't it?
I'd much rather it be that way. Like even with Dragons, I did it to the soul. Like I told.
Did you not?
No, I told like 2 of my closest friends. And then I just left it. And then even when it aired, I wasn't in the country when it aired. So again, I left it for people to just sort of like see something. And then it was like,
I know that guy. And then you got a load of texts going, "I've seen you at BBC One."
Yeah.
Funny. Oh God. And finally, Raphael, I always like to ask about happiness. And I wonder what are the things that make you happy? And it could be as a trivial, material thing or something a bit deeper than that.
I think 2 levels. On a deeper level, I think the thing that makes me happy is freedom and choice.
Right.
I think, that was the real driver for me in terms of like why I even wanted to go on this path of entrepreneurship, and specifically why I'm looking at like online based. Well, for now it's online, but just like.
What, the sort of freedom for you?
Freedom for me.
In your life.
Freedom for me, choice for me. But then the knock-on effect is then the freedom and choice I'm able to then create potentially for my family and people around me that I really care about. So, I think any time I've been at my happiest, it's been when I've had the freedom to be able to say, I want to do this, and I've been able to go and do it, or I've had a choice of different things that I've been able to want to go and do. So that's on a deeper level. And then I think more kind of like on just like an everyday kind of level, I think spending time with friends, family, and laughing.
Yeah.
Quite simply and plainly, like being with the people that I care about, being able to laugh, or being on holiday and just enjoying that moment. Those are like, literally like those
people that get you and you enjoy time.
Yeah, exactly that.
Oh, Raphael, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been
thank you
so inspiring to hear about you and Temple and more broadly, you know, what your intentions are for the brand and some of the things you want to do in the future. I'm really thrilled that it sounds like it's all going so well, and that there might be, you know, physical retail places that people can check out the brand. As I mentioned, I'll put it in the program notes and some of the products that you talked about, and we'll tell the listeners where they can find out more about the brand. But thank you so much for spending some time with us,
thank you,
and wish you every success. It's such a brilliant story, and I've no doubt we're going to see it get bigger and bigger as the years go on.
Thank you so much.
Look, take care, and thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Huge thanks to Raphael for joining me a little bit earlier this year. Really enjoyed chatting to him. And I think I always say this, but when I chat to entrepreneurial people on the podcast, I'm just always so full of admiration for the drive and the resourcefulness. And you know, there's not many of them working at Temple, and they're just sort of making it all happen. I'm so thrilled that it's going so well so far. And great to hear that there's more in the pipeline, and it feels like a brand that can really sort of talk into that space and do such an important job. So I hope you took a lot from that, as I certainly did. There's more information on Temple Skincare. Their website is www.tmpl.care. So that's tmpl.care, which is CARE. That's the website. And on Instagram, it's TMPL_care, CARE. So TMPL_care. You can find out more about Temple there. My socials are on Instagram, Man in the Mirror Pod. You can find previous guests, what's coming up, all the good things like that. And I promised at the beginning that there would be a discount code, which I'll put in the posts and in the commentary on the podcast as well, so you'll be able to find it there. But just in case you don't see it, if you go onto the Temple website and put in the discount code Man in the Mirror, so MANINTHEMIRROR. God, it was really hard just to spell that out. Man in the Mirror, all one word. If you put that in the discount code, you'll get 15% off your order, which I'm really thankful to Adam and Raphael for doing that. That's amazing. Don't often get that kind of discount code, but that's an incentive to you, the Man in the Mirror listeners. So there's a discount code that you can check out the range of Temple. I'll be back for more Man in the Mirror next time. Huge thanks to Raphael for joining me, and thanks to you, of course, for listening, and I'll see you next time. Take care.